Okay, we come to this evening and we are looking at contemporary situations and circumstances, primarily in Israel is what we're looking at. As you all are aware, unless you've been living under a rock, a couple of weeks ago on October 7th, there were terrorist attacks that were all of a sudden almost 50 years to the day, by the way. From the start of the Yom Kippur War in 1973. So those things were planned that way. We'll talk about that as far as what is involved with the various planning strategies and the tactical situations of the entities involved and everything that goes with it. If you have, and I didn't get one because I didn't want to go through all the stuff of putting stuff up on the screen and dragging computers around and everything else, but if you have a map in the back of your Bibles in the map section, or you have a good memory of how the Mideast is put together, Israel, of course, lays on the eastern end of the Mediterranean Ocean, sea, technically, I guess, if you're into oceanography. And it is bordered on the north by Lebanon, and on a little bit on the northeast by Syria. Jordan has a little bit of border space, but not too much down there. And then when you get down further south, you wind up underneath where Gaza is, the Gaza Strip on the western side of Israel, southwestern side. You have primarily Egypt down in that area, okay? So this becomes interesting as far as the military aspects. There's politics involved, of course, very much. Everything that goes through with it. The Hamas, the terrorist organization that is nothing more than an extension of the Iranian military regime and political structure, and all that, of course, is couched, based, and programmed to be part of the Muslim world over there. It's attack against the Jews, everything that goes with it. But you have Gaza, if you weren't aware of it, Gaza primarily came into existence as a political entity in the middle to late 80s. It's been about, still give or take, 35 years or so ago. It is nothing more than a proxy for Iran. Hamas never has been anything else but that. It's the terrorist arm, of the Iranian desire to control the entire Mideast and everything with it. Okay, if I can read my own notes and everything with it, as we realize that the attacks of a couple of weeks ago were started with a major missile barrage, estimated some 5,000 rockets were shot out of the Gaza Strip to land in various places in Israel, and those were, of course, completely indiscriminate. Hamas is not noted for caring whether it hits civilians or not. They just kind of will shoot them out there and let them fall where they may, and everything that goes with it. And if we get to it, we'll talk about the brouhaha that came up earlier this week when a medical facility, a hospital in the Gaza Strip, suffered major damage, and instantly Israel was blamed for targeting a hospital. Israel has never targeted hospitals. It's made every effort to keep a low body count for collateral damage, much more so than any Western nation has ever done in its history. But more on that as we go. Now, what this boils down to is terrorists are, attack your country, and the expectation then is, well, you need to defend yourself. Now, most people know, especially from a military perspective, is that defense, the best defense, is a good offense. Hamas has been pestering and shooting missiles in and breaking through the border and attacking checkpoints and just all kinds of things ever since it's been in existence for some 40 years now. with no reservations regarding civilian casualties, anything that goes with that. That is the norm that is there. Just as a point of differentiation, Hezbollah, or Hezbollah, depending upon which expert you have pronouncing it, is not quite the same. Okay, the Hamas is part of the Gaza Strip. Hezbollah is it is also a terrorist arm of Iran, but it is a little bit different makeup, and it's up on top of the the Syrian-Lebanese border up north. Okay, it's not on the interior. They serve a very similar purpose in many ways, but Hezbollah is much more tactically organized, much more militarily organized, also funded by Iran and everything that goes with it, but you get the idea of the political control. But again, remember, it is equally run by Iran, everything that goes with it. Now, we don't have time to go into some of this because copious notes develop and everything that goes with it. But you have two basic, I'll say political, but actually they're religious makeups inside the Muslim world. Anybody know what they are?
Shiite and Sunni. Shiite and Sunni.
Shiite and Sunni, yeah. And as a general rule, they don't get along because they have different goals in mind. But they do get along when it comes to attacking Israel. Okay? That's just the way it happens to run. Okay? The Hezbollah has a bigger military force by far. It's been suggested, depends upon, again, source data and who you believe, but they have the ability to field some 100,000 soldiers. Okay, when Emily and I were there, they have, we were right next to the border fence at an observation post, overlooking the Lebanon. You could see Lebanon right here, and down that way, that's Syria type of thing. Yeah, we get used to the wide open spaces here in the Northwest. You can put a whole lot of the Mideast inside any one of our Northwest states. So distances are much compressed, much compacted, and everything that goes with it. Israel, by the way, has, in the last few days, has wound up withdrawing, evacuating some 20 kibbutzes that border that fence that goes between Lebanon, primarily, some again in Syria, but most of Hezbollah is in that, staged in that northern area to the north of Israel. They too, the missile barrages that are involved with that, stop and consider now the fact that if you live in that kind of proximity, we always talk about, everybody here's watched the World War II films, with Here Comes the Luftwaffe, with their night bombing raids, and the sirens go off in London, and you have 2 or 3 minutes to get to something that resembles a bomb shelter. If you live in a kibbutz alongside that border fence, you have 5 seconds. Okay, is all you've got. Okay, yes.
What is a kibbutz?
It's a communal farm, basically, where they pool their resources and produce normally specialty crops as far as making money. It might be animals, but it might be something agricultural for export, but it's a communal venture. Can be any place from about 40 or 50 people up to several hundred, usually. Okay, so this is all part of the life, and like I said, now how far can you run in 5 to 20 seconds? Most of us not very far. Can you get to a bomb shelter? No. I mean, you are talking about literally, where my car is parked right there. That that's Lebanon. Okay, where Schultz's house is across the street over there. Okay, that is an enemy armed position that has missiles pointed at you. Okay, you see, the world is a different place, you know, when you begin talking about missile barrages, and that's why these portable bomb shelters that, for instance, Friends of Israel has been promoting now for a number of years. We saw several of them over there. They can, you know, house up to 40 people. It's not very big, you know, but you know, anything except an absolute direct hit by one of the big missiles, those things can keep that many people safe from harm over there. So more on that in a little while as well. Now, the question comes up, you know, as far as Israel defending itself. You know, if you have, well, for instance, if we decided that we would allow a terrorist group in, you can pick out any state in the union, but let's do something central and say Kansas, okay? You know, and Kansas was shooting missiles at you. What would your take on that be? Go clean out Kansas, right? Because in order to defend your national security and have a level of life within your country, you cannot have active terrorism going on, you know, on a continual basis. That's all there is to it. You know, so people ask today, you know, what is the prognosis for the next stage of the conflict? Okay, I would be very much surprised if Israel does not initially go into northern Gaza and clean out one after another of these military strongholds, these terrorist strongholds that Hamas has in place. The difficulty with that militarily is that Hamas has never made any bones about the fact that they put those installations right behind schools, right alongside of hospitals, right behind community centers, you know, behind old folks' homes, you name it. They do that intentionally, yes.
Just like you said, intentionally. So they're looking to just kill the whole community by having you in those certain places. You go and get rid of them, you're also going to get rid of your own stuff.
Yeah, the idea behind there is to not only use a human civilian shield, but to also take advantage of whatever casualties come out of that, because there is a PR campaign, more on that in just a bit. There's a public relations gambit here that they realize they can, in the right circumstances, sway public opinion of the Western countries, you know, as well as the other nations in the Mideast, if they can throw out pictures of innocent children being blown up by Israeli airstrikes, you know, or some such title, you know, and you've got this saturation campaign that goes on in the PR aspect of things, because when the hospital in Gaza was hit, and from all the intelligence data that's been reported, it was Hamas had decided to shoot a rather large missile, you know, into Israel, and the guidance system didn't work very well, and as we all know, what goes up must come down, and it went whoop ploosh, because it was fired from all the satellite data. It was fired right there, and it went up and it came right back down into the hospital and killed 450, 500 people, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, immediately the hue and cry was, look what Israel is doing. Look how Israel is retaliating. Well, it turned out, of course, rather to get rid of the knee-jerk reaction, that Israel had nothing to do with it. You know, I mean, these people were playing with a mousetrap, and they got their fingers in their own mousetrap. And unfortunately, you do have a lot of collateral damage with innocent civilians, and the Gaza Strip certainly has a huge amount of innocent civilians. They're not all military, and they're not out all shooting rockets and everything else that goes with it. Now, if with that being said, and this is going to be a little bit disjointed. This type of presentation is not my cup of tea. okay? You know, so you're gonna get kind of chunks and bits and pieces, and hopefully it'll make at least some sense by the time you get through it, you know? And here is what's going on, is Hamas is hoping for some type of retaliatory strike. Now, they do not want to get wiped out, but they're hoping that there will be some, because then they can use the public relations gambit on an international basis, you know, to say, look at Israel, look how nasty they are, look at all of the innocents that are dying because they are retaliating. And wait a minute, you guys shot 5,000 rockets in here, you know, killed what, 1,200 people, you know, took 200, you know, captives hostage. That's a bargaining chip, more on that in a bit as well. Everything that goes with that. And now remember that Iran doesn't just run Hamas. Iran runs Hezbollah too. And the threat that is hanging there is if Israel does a retaliatory strike going into, in this case, at least initially, the northern Gaza Strip to take out these positions, you know, then Hezbollah is threatening to attack the northern border. That's why Israel is evacuating those kibbutzes and those communities along that border. Okay? Israel is not particularly worried, by the way, about Hezbollah. They have expressed that, you know, they can take on a two-front war. It's not ideal, but they can do it. Okay? But they're even more. That's why Iran is campaigning that the Muslims in the West Bank stage an uprising. If Israel goes in here, we'll attack from down here. And if there's an uprising of the Muslim community in the West Bank, you know, and so forth, then you've got all kinds of these, you know, how do you defend on a three-front war? Well, Hitler tried it, didn't work out very well, you know, during World War II, so, you know, do your history type of thing, right? Everything that goes with it. Now, there's been kind of a clutch type of thing, okay? You know, already, and in a normal situation, whenever you run into this, you know, when Israel retaliates, it did it in previous conflicts, okay? By the way, you are aware that Israel has declared war on Hamas, okay? This is the first time Israel has declared war on anybody in over 50 years. Okay? They have had conflicts, and they have had terrorists, and they have had incursions into their territories and communities. Now, but this time, they've had a formal declaration of war. They are going to go after Hamas. Okay? That's going to mean additional loss of life on both sides. Okay? But Israel is highly committed, and they are highly trained, and they know what they're doing. They've been on the knife's edge of survival since 1948. You know, you learn some things on a national basis at some point. Yeah, Russ?
I hadn't heard you mention yet that there's also 300 miles of tunnels under the Gaza Strip.
Well, and that is a real issue, and Israel is well aware of all those tunnels that have been dug. There are similar things going on up on the northern border with Lebanon as well. What most in the West don't recognize as well is not only the existence of those tunnels, you know, but Israel has very good technology, and they've got these gizmos that they stick in the ground and send a pulse out, and they can monitor if a gopher is moving dirt down there, you know, let alone somebody down there opening up a tunnel. And they're pretty impressive stuff. You know, they've got miniature rail cars that can run four-wheelers back and forth loaded with, you know, munitions and explosives. You know, some of this stuff, of course, we'll just have to wait and see how it actually filters out, okay? So that's kind of the thing. Now, you have, Israel has what has been called, you know, we don't identify with this because we've never been there as a nation, but they call it literally a post-Holocaust viewpoint of survival. Okay? You know, having come out of Hitler's final solution era, You know, when they became a nation, they basically said, we have to be willing and able to defend ourselves. We can count on nobody else to defend us. If we don't do it, we lose. You know, I mean, there's been the big hoorah. We've sent 2 Nimitz-class carriers over to the Mideast as some question as whether that's a deterrent, and if it is, to whom. You know, because with the wavering, floating political scene of our own country, you have no idea for sure, you know, who's going to try to intimidate who or pressure who, by whom, in what regard, to acquiesce to demands or a political solution, you know. And what you're going to see in our media, not necessarily the Western media as a whole, but in our media, this is a prediction, as this continues, because this is not going to be a 6-day war, okay? This is going to be weeks or months, you know, and the body count's going to continue to go up and continue to go up on both sides, okay? Israel has already had 200 soldiers that have died, somewhere over 200, you know, that have been killed in action, KIA, okay? There's going to be a lot more. Some of them were in the original, you know, attack on October 7th, where you had soldiers doing their best to defend innocent people, really, and they died doing it. You know, it's you know, more of that. You know, it's a whole quite a thing. In fact, I guess my notes say now they've upped that to 300 soldiers. They figure, you know, have been killed in action. You know, that doesn't count the 200 basically civilians that were kidnapped. And that is a bargaining chip that is utilized by Hamas if they can't get Hezbollah to attack, if they can't get the military situation, they can begin ransoming, okay? And as a goodwill gesture, you notice they turned loose a mother and daughter duo. You know, I mean, after all, we're the good guys, right? You know, we're the good guys. It's Israel attacking us. It's Israel making us do these things. You know, to me, that is like the rapist who gets off the woman and then points at her and says, "You made me do this." You know, it's that ridiculous. But there are, I'll just say, bleeding heart liberals out there, you know, that simply don't understand or refuse to acknowledge what is actually the situation, that are going to go along with this type of nonsense. And then you've got the various, the squad, we're familiar with the squad, right, and some of the outrageous things that they've said and done, you know, and we look at that and we say, oh, nobody's dumb enough to believe that. You want to think so? You realize these people keep getting reelected, don't you? Okay? On their track record? Yeah, go figure, okay? So, what is the goal? Okay? This doesn't compute. We think of war, you know, and we think of somebody attacking Kansas attacks Colorado or something, you know, and we think of geography, we think of political gain, we think of being able to control commerce, you know, and, you know, people groups and things like that. That's not Hamas's intent. Hamas's intent is to exterminate Israel, to kill every Jew in the Mideast. You heard the term, push them into the sea. Well, that's the same thing. That's what they're talking about. Okay? They just want to kill every man, woman, and child that's of Jewish descent that's any place in the Mideast. Okay? By the way, if that was ever accomplished, they wouldn't stop there. They'd come to America and they'd keep doing it. They'd come to Canada and they'd do it. They'd go to India and do it. China, Australia. You know, this is, you know, really it's spiritual warfare. It's Satan trying to destroy the plan of God. God's plan still has a purpose and a place for the nation of Israel. And those of you that can remember, like, for instance, the 70 weeks prophecy of Daniel chapter 9 talked about this people in this land, in this holy city, And it talked about that last 7 years that we think of as the Great Tribulation period, or the tribulation period described in the book of Revelation. Okay? God obviously has a plan, that is still uncompleted regarding the nation of Israel. Satan doesn't want that plan completed. He'll do everything he can to see that God fails in any area of his promises. God has promised Israel that there's going to be a millennial kingdom reign. He's promised Israel a special place in the end times and so forth. If Satan can cause the destruction of national Israel, then Satan's stronger than God. And he becomes the Most High God instead of the biblical God. Anyway, you get the idea, okay? What they want to do is then not only clear the Jews out of Israel, but they want to then secure the land and turn it into a Muslim country, a Muslim paradise, for Allah's glory. Okay? That's it. It's a religious platform is what they're looking at. These people are filled with zeal for this, everything that goes with it. The game plan is now shifting a little bit tactically, so to speak. The game plan inside of this war situation is that Israel is very good about plans. But one of the things that you learn from the filter down, I never went there, I never had to rank, but they, in the Pentagon, they have what they call a war college. And they send their promising young battle officers in combat MOSs, to this war college so that they can understand how warfare is to be conducted, okay? Everything that goes, one of the first things that they teach you in that, having talked to various officers that have gone through it, is no battle plan survives past the first contact with the enemy, because the enemy might not fight according to your plan. So you're going to have to assess and adjust and then act based upon your response to what the enemy's plan is and how that unfolds, everything that goes with it. Okay? So you've got such things as, I don't know, I better just, not get sidetracked on that one. How about going to here? Okay. The idea, what you see here is Hamas is primarily a pure terrorism group. They get up in the morning and they say, let's go kill some Jews. They don't give a whole lot thought to how or what's involved or what's next or what's stage 2. They don't have a stage 2. They have a stage 1. Stage 1 is let's go kill Jews. Okay? The thing is when this attack of 2 weeks ago came in with their paragliders and their 5,000 missile rocket barrage has to be coordinated. Terrorists don't coordinate anything. They just grab a bag of C4 explosive and whatever gun has happened and a big butcher knife to hack people with, and they head over the border, over the fence, whatever. What you have in this is something that is pretty tactically organized ahead of time. This is all up and down the Gaza Strip. Okay? This is not just something that was spur of the moment, let's do this. Okay? It's much more than that. This shouldn't surprise you if you remember that Hamas is nothing more than the proxy of Iran. Iran does have the ability to tactically assess and organize a overall strike militarily and to coordinate these people with these people with these people and the armor with the infantry with the rocket shooting guys and so forth. They do. They've been doing that for quite a while. They're better trained, everything that goes with it. Okay, but again, be reminded, Israel understands all this. So they realize that they're not in for another 3-day conflict or a terrorist group cutting through some fence and firing up a checkpoint or something else. Okay? It's not a random, let's blow up Jews at a bus depot in Jerusalem. two guys with explosives strapped to them or something. This is not what we're dealing with here. You're dealing with a concentrated effort to get about this. You have, again, how they put this package together. They didn't take hostages by chance. They picked out a certain place and a certain event at a certain time and coordinated all this stuff, knowing that once again, it's at the tag end of a Jewish holiday. Okay? Everything that goes with it, knowing that the military is down at a maintenance mode during these holiday areas, because you get the idea. When they cut loose, as many soldiers as they can to go on leave. By the way, there's huge amount of Israelis, in the last 2 weeks that are someplace else in the world that got on an airline, especially El Al, which is Israel's airline, and are now back in Israel, rejoining their units because they know what's going to go on. They're committed to this. They're going to go with it. But the whole hostage situation, the hostage thing was not done by accident. The hostage that's where they went knowing what they could take with a bunch of civilian hostages, to, again, the PR campaign and everything that goes with it, as well. I can't even read my notes here. But if you're going to look then at what Israel is going to try to do, and I believe will do, but how much effort and how big the body count is anybody's guess. They have to do something about freeing these hostages, okay? Now, you've got the idiocy of some people in governmental circles that think you can undertake this type of a situation and free all 200 hostages without anybody getting hurt, except the bad guys. Depending upon who you figure the bad guys are. This is not going to happen. Israel is very good. They are already freeing hostages by going out and putting strike teams into the northern end of the Gaza Strip. Okay? And the polite term is neutralizing the enemy forces, which means they kill them all. Okay? You're probably, and except for intelligence purposes, Israel is not going to take captives. Okay? They're going to go in, they're going to identify and target the terrorists, and they're going to take them out. Okay? They're going to kill them. Okay? You leave them alive, they'll just come back next year and attack you again. We're not talking about, we're going to take Colorado and then we'll be happy and everybody can get along from that time forward. They're not going to stop at Colorado. They're going to do Wyoming. Well, good luck with Wyoming. They might get parts of Colorado, but Wyoming's got too many guys with ARs. And then they head south and east, because their goal is not geography. Their goal is to eradicate the Jewish nation, to kill them all. Okay? So they're going to have to deal with the hostage situation, Israel. Then they're going to have to regain control of the border, which at this point, basically they have. Okay? There are no, to speak of, there are no incursions coming out of Gaza right now, coming into Israel on Israel's side of the border fence. Not happening. They've got too much technology, they're too well trained, they know the techniques, they know how to do that kind of stuff, okay? Then they have to take care of not only the Hamas thing, but they've got to take care of the threat coming from Hezbollah. Okay? You realize that Iran is sitting there waiting to see what's going to develop. Okay? And they're waiting to see what level of response or retaliatory strikes Israel is going to put on the Gaza Strip. And then they're going to say, is this a good time for us to attack or not? Okay. You and I don't think this way until you get to the War College and you get some of their stuff. You see, there's a lot, especially in the Mideast, the perception of weakness from an enemy. If the enemy is willing to make a concession, you've all heard of the $6 billion that was the frozen assets that then President Biden turned loose, and now we don't know for sure whether it's been, the transaction's gone through, or which liar, has the biggest fib, or who you can believe or not believe, everything that goes with it. But they will tell you, even some of our own politicians, that is for humanitarian aid. Okay? Well, here's how it works. If you're going to do that. Okay? You've got $6 billion coming in humanitarian aid. That's been promised. It's been laid on the table. Everything. The process is in motion. You take the $6 billion that you already have and direct it straight towards military attack forces and munitions, knowing that when the humanitarian aid money comes in, you can put that back where you stole the $6 billion from to begin with. Dare I say, rob Peter to pay Paul? Yeah, anyway, you kind of get the idea. Is it going to be escalated? Yeah, Russ.
Plus $80 billion worth of free weapons of ours.
We left a lot of stuff over there, didn't we? Yeah, courtesy of the United States government, actually the politicians primarily, decided. Now, what that is, okay, when we pulled out of Afghanistan under the circumstances we did, the Mideast looked at that, the Oriental mindset looks at that and says, weakness, we won. That makes the United States an attackable opponent. Okay? That's why Israel has to be very careful when you get into bartering for prisoners, for hostages, because if they do, via pressure from the West or the United Nations or the United States or some combination, okay, the Oriental mindset is going to say, we've got them between a rock and a hard place, because they're willing to make concessions because they're trying to bargain from a position of weakness. Because the Oriental mindset says, if I'm stronger than you, I take a sword and lop your head off.
The art of war.
I don't mess with you. Okay? That's all there is to it. So you've got a very distinct pecking order over there when it comes to strength and weakness. Okay? We think we're being the nice guy, by making concessions and going to the peace table and giving away parts of Israel, or giving away, who knows, this, that, or the next thing. That's not the mindset in the Orient. They look at that and they don't see where you're being a nice person or you are trying to operate towards peace. They don't care about peace. Okay? It's and when you start dealing with, terrorism like this, and it's right in their charter, we want to exterminate Israel, everything that goes with it, okay? So this leaves Israel with a interesting position, because the last of the goals, at least what we're covering here, is they have to eliminate Hamas. They've got to be able to identify and then go in surgically and eliminate Hamas. Otherwise, all the body count, all the hassle, all the money, all the other stuff that has gone on and will go on in the next few months has no value whatsoever, because 2 years from now, Hamas is going to do it again. Okay? They have to eliminate them. Yeah.
That principle played out in the Bible too, in the Old Testament, when God told them to take somebody out, even their animals, and they didn't do it, and it backfired later.
Yeah. You see, the Oriental mindset, somebody comes up and pops us in the nose. And we go, oh, hold it, wait. Before we start beating each other to death, let's talk through this. The Oriental mindset is, you hit me, I hit you back twice as hard, just as fast as I can. Okay? That's not really the Western attitude towards dealing with conflict resolution, but that's their attitude. Okay? If my sword's bigger than your sword, I take your head off and then everything is fine. You're dead, I won, I take your stuff and I move on. Okay? Again, we don't think that way. I mentioned the PR war, public relations war. Western response. Already mentioned the hospital. Immediately you've got a knee-jerk response of Israel is the bad guy. Israel is the oppressor. Okay? Israel, is beating up on the PLO, and Hamas is the victim. If you understand the terminology used by these groups when it comes to Hamas talking about Israel, Israel is an occupation force. They are occupying the PLO's land. And they want to eliminate that. Again, terminology, however you it. But when the West says we need to negotiate to bring peace, Hamas says we won because you're not willing to fight us. Which means we're stronger than you are. So now we're going to bargain from a position of strength, knowing you don't really want to fight. That's the way it works. Might not be the way we look at it. So the question sometimes comes up of, so who's the bad guy? Well, it depends upon which side of the conflict you're on, a little bit, doesn't it? Depends upon how you've been indoctrinated, how you've been raised, everything that goes with it. The very first thing that some of the, like the squad in Washington, D.C., that jumped up with, was we need to make sure that, even though Israel has a right to defend itself, they kind of had to concede that. Okay? Because that was, for the first time in decade upon decade, you even had people from Hollywood, that were saying Israel has the right to fight back. This was a terrorist attack. This is not right. We side with Israel, which means that Hamas, if they had any brains, and it's questionable in some ways, but Iran does, is going to look at the PR, and their response is going to be, we may have screwed up. Okay? Because going in and killing a bunch of civilians, with this unwarranted terrorist attack that is being condemned by all of Western Europe, all Western nations, and even the United States, even our own Washington, D.C. pundits, for the most part, have taken a rather unusual view. They're saying that, Israel has been attacked. Israel has a right to retaliate and deal with this terrorism problem. It really does. Okay? So what they have done then, already you're seeing this filter into the media, is, but Israel needs to be held accountable for an appropriate level of retaliatory response. Yeah? Tell that to 1,100 dead civilians that got butchered. And boy, if you haven't seen some of the graphic stuff that came out of those terrorist attacks, you need to just open your eyes, grit your teeth, and take a lot of Alka-Seltzer and go look at some of those pictures. Okay? It's pretty brutal stuff. It really is. This makes Hitler's Holocaust look like a Sunday school picnic compared to what they've done. This is really gruesome stuff. It really is. I don't want to, really bum anybody out on this. Okay, you see, there is very little approval in the Western world. Did Hamas misjudge? Did Iran misjudge the public response to this type of a terrorist attack? It seems like they may well have. But right now there's kind of a riding the fence to see what Israel's going to do, and then the public relations is probably going to try to vilify Israel for whatever level. They've already tried it with the hospital, and that kind of made them look dumb. Because when the truth actually came out, it said, well, the guys blew up themselves, they blew up their own people, don't blame Israel. But that's not gonna stop them from pointing the finger at Israel when the next thing comes up. You know, a sliver, a pimple, I don't know, what happens? Warfare is uncertain. You get into populated areas, there is collateral damage. You want a one-on-one type of thing, well, go get your dueling pistols and go out, at dawn and have at each other. Otherwise, there's very likely to be collateral damage. Okay? Innocent people are gonna die and get caught up with it, however you wish to look at it. Okay? The reality, whether you wanna call it Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, whatever, they don't want peace with Israel. Okay? That's not their intent. They want to exterminate Israel. Okay? They want all the geography of the Mideast to be under direct Muslim control. Okay? And that's not going to happen unless they eliminate Israel, unless they kill the whole bunch. Okay? Now, you've got the mixed messages that coming from the White House, for instance, in this case, it's our president goes over to show solidarity and support for Israel. Well, great, that's a nice gesture, and says we're standing behind Israel. But by the time he gets home, he's calling for a two-state solution. Okay? You know what a two-state solution is, don't you? We give the terrorists Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas, and anytime that they want to attack Oklahoma, we say, don't do that. That's not nice. Yeah. I mean, that's not going to work. I mean, it never has. The two-state solution is based upon the fact that both states really want to find a peaceful solution. Hamas doesn't care about a peaceful solution. They want to eliminate Israel. End of, that's all there is to it. However you look at it, okay? So whatever they perceive as weakness, they're going to try to exploit. And when the West goes to the bargaining table and says, what will it take for you to release, those 200 prisoners? Now we get into, and from Hamas's point of view, all you have done is said, we're weak enough, we want to negotiate because we don't figure we can win if we do battle with you. Israel knows that. Our politicians know it. But whether they can sell that to the general public of the West, whether it's the U.S. or not, is a whole different ballgame. So, good luck with a lot of that, however you wish to look at it, okay? All you have to look at is the present state of what's going on in Israel and the Gaza Strip. Okay? Israel has never attacked without provocation. There has been none of that. Okay? So you stay there, we'll give you the Gaza Strip, 40 years ago. You can be autonomous in your politics, economics, we'll assist you in a variety of ways. Half of the Gaza Strip travels every day into Israel to work so that they can make a living and then go back. All of this is provided, and what does Hamas's approach wind up with doing? Terrorism. The two-state solution, you can't give them back to Golan Heights, you can't give them back to West Bank. We went to both of those places, went through them. Okay, just indiscriminately. Go ahead, knock yourself out. We won't just stop with Wyoming and Colorado, let's give them Nevada. Maybe that'll appease them until they want Alabama, and then they want North Carolina, and then they want Pennsylvania. How much of that are you going to give away trying to achieve peace with people that don't want peace? They want to eliminate you. Not very smart, okay? But that is what sometimes is trying to be sold for the sake of getting to the peace process and getting to negotiate, an acceptable settlement. Okay? Hamas will accept any settlement they can possibly get and then turn right back around and attack again at the next opportunity. Okay? That's what they've been doing for 40 years. They're not going to quit now. I have a note here that says something about idiot Biden, but I won't read it. Okay. Here's politically, okay, the President Netanyahu, President of Israel, to show you the difference here, he immediately reached out. Israel is a very interesting nation politically. Okay? It is almost unheard of that they get through an entire session with the Knesset, where they don't have to form another coalition government. The process is really complicated and it's wild and woolly. It really is. The first thing that Netanyahu did following the attack, or among the very first things, was reach out to the opposition leaders and say, this is what we have to do. We have to lay aside the internal differences. We have to forget about who's getting what percentage off the banana groves and the coconut trees, and who's getting how much water and where we're building new this or that. We have to say we're going to lay that aside because we have a common enemy. And in that area, I'd say once again, Iran and Hamas have really blown it. They really have. Because they have provided a vehicle for Israel to show solidarity and unity that hasn't been very common since 1948. It really hasn't. So just some ideas there as well. Okay. What do we got here? Okay, just a couple of things in closing. Revelation chapter 12, not getting hardly any Bible per se as such tonight. I warned you about that the last couple of weeks. Is you have a description of the dragon, okay, symbolic of Satan himself, who attacks the man-child, Jesus Christ, okay. He attacked mankind in a variety of ways, but always with the purpose of destroying God's promises, to mankind in general and to the nation of Israel in specific. If Satan can somehow thwart God's plans for the nation of Israel, then Satan has proven that God is not only not all-powerful, but that God can't be trusted, okay? Which means Satan wins. Okay? So you're talking really about spiritual warfare. Ephesians chapter 6 type of stuff with the whole armor of God. But where's the real battle? Paul said our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness in the heavenly places. Right? So that's where the real battle is going on. And Satan is using Hamas, Iran, and a variety of other peoples around the world, people groups, ethnic groups, you put whatever label you want to put on them. But Satan realizes if he can eliminate Israel, then God can never complete his promises to the nation of Israel. By the way, you might stop and think about this. Reformed theology is very popular in the United States, has been for a number of years. It ebbs and flows. The idea that the church, amongst other ideas in there, is that the church has replaced Israel. Okay? Now, I'm not going to go into it, but connect the dots and you should be able to figure out where that leads to. Okay? There's a real problem with the whole concept to begin with, but if it did have value, then the church is going to be eliminated, right after they get done in the Mideast. So you kind of get that idea. But you're talking about a great spiritual battle is what you're dealing with. Now, let me give you a prophetic utterance. I don't look much like a prophet, do I? No, don't act like it either. But let me give you something. Let me give you a speculation based upon God. Okay? God says he's not done with Israel. which means that whether it's this current conflict in the Mideast or maybe one yet to come or wherever around the world, that God says, I'm not finished with that nation. I have a plan and a purpose, and that is not accomplished yet, which means that there is a future for the nation of Israel, which means that Hamas is not going to win. However, the body count may be pretty grim. The damage done, you know, the all kinds of you know, collateral damage, you know, and deaths and everything that goes with it. What is the cost? Okay, what is the cost? Okay, here's the reality. Hamas doesn't care, Iran doesn't care, and Satan doesn't care. Okay? If we, those who oppose terrorism and are in support of Israel and God's plan for that nation, if we go to the bargaining table and say, what do we have to give up in order for you to quit shooting rockets into Israel? What do we have to give up to get those 200 prisoners back? You know, we are buying back what is already rightfully ours, so to speak. You know? Stop and think about it. From the Mideast, from the Oriental viewpoint, that is as big a show of weakness as you can possibly imagine. You're saying, I can't go toe-to-toe with you, so let me crawl across the carpet and kiss your boots, and you know, if you do me a favor, you know, I'll clean out the outhouse for you for the next 10 years. You know, if you just quit pounding on me. You know, that's the way it's perceived. You know, we look at it and we say, you're doing the right thing. You're trying to bring an end to the conflict. You're trying to wrap it all up. You're trying to make everything right and let people get along with each other. To the neighborhood bully, you just said, I'm too weak to stand up and fight. Right? I think that they bit off more than they can chew. Okay? Because Israel is a pretty committed people. Now, what can we do to help out? Well, a number of things. Number one, we can realize without any apology whatsoever that God has selected the nation of Israel for a special plan and purpose. Genesis chapter 12 tells us that promises in the Abrahamic covenant that I will bless him that blesses you and curse him that curses you. That God's not done. You know, all the other things that go with that. And what is the standard there? Well, at least from a proverbial sense, you remember in Matthew chapter 25, following the judgment of sheep and goats at the return of Christ at the second advent, he gathers all the peoples of the world that are still physically alive, and he divides them into sheep and goats. You know? And the goats are taken out and killed. But the sheep come before him, and they are the ones that go physically into the millennial kingdom reign. And they ask the question, what standard of judgment, what makes the difference between a sheep and a goat? And Jesus says, remember when I was hungry and you fed me? Remember when I was thirsty and you gave me to drink? Remember when I needed clothing and you clothed me? You know? Remember when I was lost and you came and you found me? Kind of, you know, the whole package there. And they said, what? We don't remember that. They're looking at the Lord. We don't remember that. He said, if you've done it unto one of the least of these, my brethren, it's the same as how you treat the Jew is important. Okay? Now, that might not have a direct interpretive principle, you know, because of the context, but the proverbial principle is absolutely true. We need to realize that God's promise to bless or curse, depending upon how we respond. Does that mean that Israel's always right? No. No, they're just like us. They got sin natures. They got all kinds of problems. You know, they've got ups and downs. They yell and holler and scream at each other. You know, and all that stuff as well. But you kind of get the idea, you know, all the way through. Okay, we can pray Okay, Bible talks about praying for the peace of Jerusalem, praying for the nation of Israel, praying for everything that's there. For Israel itself, probably right now, if you are led to support Israel in a tangible way, there are the best, well, I'll just put it this way, the best one I know of is the Israeli Relief Fund. You can tap into it directly through Friends of Israel. You can go onto their website, and just click on the different tabs and, pull it right up. FOI.org will take you to Friends of Israel's website. Okay? No problem at all, and you can go from there as well. What that's going to do, it does not go for ammunition. Okay? Regardless of what you hear, and if you're down buying 5.56 ammo currently, you notice the price hike. Israel is not short of ammunition. Israel is not short of rockets or jet planes or nuclear bombs if it comes to that, and Israel will use them if they have to. Okay? But they are short of those bomb shelters. They make those and then haul them in and put them right in the town plazas, or right next to the schools, or right next to the civic centers or the hospitals, so that as many people as possible, because you remember, if you're on the northern border, you got 5 or 10 seconds. You're not going to get very far, in order to get away from a